Chinese costumes. Today, we'll talk about American costumes. First, let's look at the learning objectives of my course today. You are going to learn some historical features of America. And second one, you will know the clothing style of each decade. And the third one, learn some words relating to clothes. First, let's go back to 1920s. It was luxurious time. And the time was just after World War I and before the Great Depression. Many American people, they made a large fortune by selling weapons to foreign countries during the First World War. On the other hand, many war survivors began to challenge the social value at that time, so hedonism began to spread all over the country. The word hedonism, that means enjoying the life by spending a large fortune. Another word, flapper, began to popular. Flapper, that means young lady. And the hairstyles for flappers, they usually wore short dresses and short hair. It was called bob hair. And they usually wore hats and makeup. They drank and smoked in public. On their clothes, there were expensive accessories such as diamonds. And for men, they usually wore straw hat and double-breast suit in bright color. For children, they usually wore light color pants. Okay, next, we will go to 1930s. 1930s, there was one big event took place. There was the Great Depression. It was also called capitalistic world economic crisis. It began from the United States. Just after a major fall in stock prices that began around September 4th, 1929. It lasted to 1932. The reason was a dilemma of enlargement of production and the relative consumption ability of common people. Despite the Great Depression, Hollywood movies reached a golden age. The reason was that the introduction of sound into movies. And during this period of time, there were different kinds of movies appeared, such as comedies, Western movies, horror movies. So Hollywood movie stars began to have a profound influence on the clothing style of common people, such as the hairstyle. And the women like to have their hair curled. And this kind of curly hair usually done by themselves. And another one is the white satin dress. It was very popular at that time for females. And look at this picture. It was a kind of special dress called a Linton dress. It was a white cotton organdy gown with large ruffled sleeves, puffed at the shoulder. And for men, they were influenced by Clark Gable. And look at this one. They usually wore overcoat with a V-neck top and a brown brim hat. Okay, so for women, the long dress changed from being loose to body tight with a wavy hemline. Look at this one. The ballet hat looked elegant, and for men, the brim of their hat turned over. And they wore a tie instead of a bow tie and duck suit. Next, we will go to 1940s. During this period of time, World War II took place. The silk stockings made by Nina first appeared on the stage of World Expo in New York. Immediately, women became crazy on it because they found the stockings made their legs charming. But because of the war, Nina was considered military material, so it was stopped producing. For women, they usually wore warm-toned, short-tied dress, and they began to focus on comfortable style. They carried bigger handbag, wore gigantic hat. For men, they usually wore plaid sweater, vest with a shirt, and khaki pants. Because of the Second World War, many young people thought wearing military uniform was so cool. So, military uniform was popular at that time. And the features included military uniform was a narrow shoulder, body tight, and people usually made the waistline inside. French designer Louis Riet designed one swimsuit during this period of time. He named it Bikini, adopting the name from the bikini atoll in the Pacific Ocean. On this island, one public test of a nuclear bomb took place 4 days before. So, he could not find any model to wear his bikini. He hired some dancer from Paris to wear bikini to take part in one swimsuit show. And the style of women's clothing during 1950s is that they usually wore some bold color dress, such as red dress and green dress. There were different kinds of colors. Look at this one. It was called Wings, Peter Pan, Green, and Shore. And for men, during this kind of time, they began to wear comfortable clothes, such as they usually wore a leather jacket and carried it in the bag, and bright waist jeans. They put t-shirt into pants. And look at the shoes. They were comfortable shoes called canvas shoes. Next, let's go to 1960s. During 1960s, there were two trends. The first one, that is, young generations appeared. In America, half of the people were young people. And the second trend was a second wave of feminist movement took place. Because of that, women's social status had greatly improved. And look at this picture. It was called mini skirt. The appearance of this one was the indication of women's social status improvement. The hemline was above the knees, generally at the mid-thigh level, normally no longer than 10 centimeters below the buttocks. Okay, so another kind of clothing of females that is called unisex clothes. Unisex, that means you cannot judge whether this kind of clothing style was worn by females or males. It has another name that was less smoking. So look at the designer. The designer was Yves Saint Laurent. And so he designed this kind of dress in 1967. The features included white shirt and a bow tie and black suit. And another influence that is from Chinese movie star Bruce Lee. And because of his influence, mustard yellow became popular. During 1960s, the males' clothing style was that they usually wore a black framed glasses, and the clothes were tight knitted and tall waist trousers. Okay, so some kind of unusual groups appeared during 1960s. They were called hippies. Hippies were young people in the United States at that time. They were opposed to social state. And hippie culture was a kind of rebellious culture. And the features of hippies, they usually wore long hair and beard. And the clothing style was they usually wore brightly colored clothes and bare-bottom pants and tie-dyed garments and long full skirts. During 1970s, one kind of special music began to popular. It was called disco. Disco is a music genre and a subculture that emerged in the 1970s from the United States urban nightlife scene. Young people usually dance with strong disco music played by DJ, and the clothing style of that time. That is, the women usually wore contrast color scarf, sunglasses, and bare-bottom pants. And the men usually had their hair curled and flared trousers. Okay, next we'll go to 1980s. During 1980s, one special kind of group began to appear. They were called yappies. Yappies means young urban professional. It's a term coined in the early 1980s. Usually they had a good job, such as lawyers, architects, and doctors. And their clothing style for yappies, for men, they usually wear 3 layers of clothes, including shirt, vest, and tie, and duck suit. Okay, so for females, they usually wore evening dresses with shoulder straps, and they carried elegant small handbag. And for men, they usually wore Ray-Ban glasses, reflect trouser legs rolled to the ankle. Okay, last we will talk about American cowboys. So when you first look at the word cowboy, what kind of words will come to your mind? Is that independent, hardworking, brave, wise, courageous, cooperating, or strong-willed? So in fact, the word cowboy actually originated from one Spanish word, which meant cow. A cowboy is an animal handler employed to look after cattle on North America ranches and perform other ranch-related tasks. During the 16th century, the Spanish settlers brought their cattle raising tradition and their horses and cattle to Mexico and Florida. The development of cowboys, the reasons were mainly 2 reasons. First, in 1960s, the Civil War took place. There was great need for beef in East America. And the second reason was the invention of frozen chain compartment. And because of that, the beef could be transported to east cities, and the beef remained fresh. Okay, look at this picture. This was the journey of the beef transportation. First, the cattle was transported from Texas and some Southwest American cities, and then they would go to Kansas. One train station. Okay, and when we will take the cattle to Chicago. So when they reached Chicago, they would be cured and cut and frozen, and then transported to eastern cities. There were 3 main kinds of people, okay, consisting of cowboys, betrayed soldiers, Indians, African American slaves. People usually thought cowboys were merely made up of white people, but in fact, a large majority of black people consisted of cowboys. And this picture was one picture to show the typical cowboys' clothing. It should include broad-trimmed hat, and this one was called bandana, vest, and jeans, boots. Okay, so first let's look at the hat. The function of cowboy's hat acted as a bailer, bow, and pillows. The hat used to be made of felt. Now it is made of leather or straw. And so this picture shows the development of cowboy's hat. And next, we'd like to introduce the Stetson hat because it was one symbol of cowboys. And so in 1865, John B. Stetson Company made a special hat. It was called Boss of the Plains. And this kind of hat was a large, green, and oval, cylindrical crown. And next, look at this one. It was called bandana. It was some kind of kerchief. And there were different kinds of functions for it. So for example, they could protect mouth and nose from dust. They could cover the back of the cowboy's neck to prevent sunburn. And the cowboys could tie it around their heads to keep their heads from blowing off on windy days. And last one, they also could use it to as a makeshift sling for a broken arm. The cowboy's shirt was long sleeve to prevent being sunburned, and it was a sheet cotton fabric shirt. And also, they usually wore waistcoat or called vest. For cowboys' trousers, before the popularity of jeans, trousers were made of linen. To protect their legs, they wore a set of leggings called chaps over their trousers. And the chaps were made of leather or animal hide. And last, we'll look at the boots of cowboys. It was high boots with a spur. Spur, look at this one. The purpose of wearing a spur was to make the horse move fast. Okay, last, let's draw a conclusion here. Clothes do not only represent fashion, but also indicate social trend and cultural features during one historical period. Okay, so that's all for today. Goodbye, everyone.